Today, I'd like to talk about resilience and healthy ways to approach this idea of recovery and also unhealthy ways that actually can reinforce the kind of harm that people are actually trying to recover from. I work with purpose-driven, empathetic women leaders who are really trying to reframe career paths and also transition out of toxic workplace environments. And so resilience is a huge part of that, and finding a really authentic and healthy way to approach that is a big part of the coaching work and research that I do. This is a second part of an earlier video that I did, which is talking about reconstituting self beyond toxic workplace environments. And this topic specifically is coming out in a publication next year in early 2026, which is published by the International Leadership Association, and that is from the Transformative Women Leaders book series. So my chapter within that will be talking about reconstituting self and healthy ways of understanding resilience after leaving toxic workplace environments. So today I'm going to talk about three elements that are often discussed within resilience, within people who are recovering from toxic workplaces, particularly for women leaders. They will kind of go in these three categories through this brief video. I'll talk about issues related to simplified understandings of grit and thick skin. I'll problematize the discussion or idea of the bounce-backable woman. And I'll also discuss, define, and then reframe what sacrificial embrace means, in particular for empathetic, purpose-driven women leaders. So the issue with resilience that I want to bring up is that oftentimes there is this umbrella discussion or softening effect around issues of toxic workplaces and toxic relational issues, where one says, gosh, that person is so resilient, they have been able to reframe and bounce back. And oftentimes, while that can help prevent a victim mentality, it can also minimize and dilute the actual experiences of harm that have taken place, and in some ways promote or simply be complicit in the structures that caused that need for resilience or bouncing back. So what I try to impress upon my clients and share within my research is that when we look at just enduring these conditions, whether they be toxic workplace dynamics or abusive relational dynamics, when we look at it as just about enduring these dynamics and celebrating how one can sort of get through or bounce back, we are not addressing issues of equity. So prioritizing endurance over equity, and then also building on narratives that prioritize the idea of moving on rather than making change. So I promote the latter in both of these, promoting equity and pathways for making change, while at the same time promoting the process of recovery that one may be going through, without oversimplified understandings of resilience. So we'll start with the first one, talking about grit and building thick skin. This is oftentimes celebrated for leaders that are going through challenging times, who are enduring conditions that are really difficult, but then kind of coming out on the other side in a positive way. When we only prioritize the building of grit and thick skin, we then overlook the structures, particularly for women leaders and minoritized leaders. We overlook the conditions that are causing the need for that kind of perseverance, that kind of grit building or developing of thick skin. So again, by only celebrating that sort of outcome of building that guard, that resiliency, as opposed to looking at the underlying issues that are causing the need for that kind of grit. Similarly, with the notion of the bounce-backable woman, this in some ways builds this heroic superhuman quality that a woman may have, or any minoritized leader who is overcoming such issues of inequality, discrimination, harassment, whatever it may be. When one looks at it in this sort of celebratory way of glorifying the challenge that one went through, at the end point becoming this bounce-backable woman, this amazing bounce-backable woman, really overlooks the chronic and long-term effects of having had to endure those kind of realities. So the bounce-backable woman, that celebration and glorification of that, really overlooks and minimizes, and in many cases silences, the real conditions that are causing the need for one to continually bounce back. And over time, that becomes compounded in ways that really diminish one's vitality, one's self-worth, one's self-esteem, one's ability to be a distinct autonomous individual. If one is constantly just having to bounce back, one's quality of life diminishes at each and every instance that she's having to, quote unquote, bounce back. And the third piece that I want to discuss here is called sacrificial embrace. And this is very related. This is particularly for people who have purpose-driven or callings, as one would say, to their work. There is such a desire to be in the line of work, whether it be frontline work, military, healthcare, pastoral leadership, teachers, anyone who is giving of themselves in a very self-sacrificial way runs the risk of having this idea of sacrificial embrace. This is when one's deep sense of purpose and call in one's work causes one to minimize or override experiences of chronic psychological or physical abuse. And there is that inner monologue that says, well, this is just part of the job, or this is what I signed up for, or the cost-benefit analysis of these difficulties and challenges is not over the importance of this job for me. And so this sense of calling can cause particularly women and minoritized leaders to absorb so much abuse, and in many cases, institutions taking advantage of that kind of empathy and purpose-driven, call-centered work identity. So these three areas I really call out a lot with my coaching clients and in my research, because when we look at resilience as celebrating grit and thick skin, celebrating the amazing bounce-backable woman, or embracing these sacrifices and this abuse simply because of a deep sense of calling, we really overlook and avoid discussing the dynamics systemically, relationally, that are causing this need to develop thick skin, bounce back, or become resilient. So the important thing I want to leave here today with is developing an authentic and healthy understanding of resilience. When one individual person experiences this, to be able to ask oneself, is it healthy for me to be able to build a narrative that says this is just part of the job, or I'm sort of paying my dues, or this is making me better and stronger in my ability to sort of work through crisis? Yes, there are important elements of that enable us to become more effective leaders, strong leaders, but I think there is a cost when we only focus on that side. So my goal, in particular with the women that I work with, is to balance this sense of wanting to avoid victim mentality, because that can also derail us, avoiding an exclusively victim mentality viewpoint, but at the same time acknowledging and addressing the actual victimization that has occurred, or the actual harm or injustices or toxic workplace that has occurred. And using that as a jumping off point to then make really informed choices, value-aligned decisions related to one's career and relationships, and to be able to come from a position of strength that says, I'm going to enact radical boundaries around what I'm willing to endure, willing to embrace within this context or this relationship. And if other people respond in a healthy and responsible way toward those boundaries, then this is a path that I'm willing to move forward in. But when those established boundaries are then rejected or judged or scrutinized, then the question really is back to the individual person themselves. What am I willing to endure? What are the values that I want to put forth in my career path? And to make really aligned choices that set oneself up for a more thriving and healthy career path and relational journey.